Hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this virtual workshop. In today's talk, I will compare gradients and parcellation approaches for functional connectivity behavior prediction. The brain is active even at rest. This video from Daniel shows the functional MRI signal when the subject is lying at rest in the scanner. As you can see, these large spontaneous activity fluctuations appear throughout the brain. These spontaneous fluctuations during resting state functional MRI can be used to interrogate brain network organization. For example, if we choose a seed in PCC and correlate its time course across the cortex, we can get this famous default network. This procedure is called functional connectivity. If we move the seed region around the brain, we see that the correlation pattern changes a lot, suggesting that adjacent brain regions can have very different connectivity patterns. So this has motivated many studies to extract discrete or continuous representations of brain using functional connectivity. Here I'm showing you examples of gradients and parcellations. Gradient techniques look for continuous representations of brain. Parcellation approaches can be further categorized as soft parcellations and hard parcellations. For soft parcellation, each vertex can be assigned into multiple RIs, while for hard parcellation, each vertex can only be assigned to one single RI. In these three examples, we can see they all capture similar default network structure. Many papers have demonstrated that individual differences in resting state functional connectivity can be used for behavior prediction. Therefore, behavior prediction can be used to assess quality of different brain representations. So in this talk, we focus on behavior prediction and compare the performance of gradient techniques versus parcellation approaches. We consider two gradient techniques, two soft parcellation approaches, and two hard parcellation approaches. I will first introduce two gradient techniques. We first consider local gradient approach pioneered by Steve Peterson's group. The local gradient approach detects the local changes in functional connectivity patterns. This figure is an example of the gradient map. Bright color indicates rapid change in functional connectivity at that location. And dark color indicates slow change in functional connectivity at that location. We also consider the principal gradients developed by Daniel Margulies, where he applies nonlinear diffusion embedding to decompose functional connectivity into multiple principal gradients. We align gradients across subjects and pick the top 5 gradients that will match very well across subjects. For soft parcellation approaches, we include spatial ICA. I guess we all know what is spatial ICA. Basically, spatial ICA decomposes resting state functional MRI data into a set of spatially independent maps and their corresponding time courses. We try different number of ICA components, 50, 100, 200, and 300. This figure shows 10 ICA spatial maps as examples. Another soft parcellation approaches we include is Profumo. This is a relatively new approach, also from the FSL group. Profumo explicitly models between subject variability to estimate spatial maps. The red figure shows 10 Profumo spatial maps as examples. For hard parcellation approaches, we include the Schaefer 400 region group level parcellation shown here. The Schaefer group level parcellation is generated based on a gradient weighted Markov random field model, which integrates both local gradients and global similarity approaches. We also include my 400 region individual specific parcellation shown on the right. We extended our previous multi-session hierarchical Bayesian model for estimating brain networks to estimate finer area level parcellations. So far, I have briefly introduced gradient and parcellation approaches we considered for the comparison. As I mentioned in previous slides, that we focus on comparison between gradients and parcellations for functional connectivity behavior prediction. I will then describe our behavior prediction model. We consider 58 behavior measures from the Human Connectome project. We use kernel regression to predict behavior. Roughly speaking, what this does is that behavior of test subject is estimated to be the weighted average of all training subject behaviors. So a training subject is weighted more if the training subject's gradients or parcellation features are more similar to the test subject. So this similarity is defined based on correlation of gradients or parcellation features between subjects. In this way, we will construct the inter-subject similarity matrix for different approaches. So let's first look at gradient techniques. For the local gradient approach, the inter-subject similarity matrix is simply defined as correlation between subject gradient maps. For example, the highlighted entry is the correlation between gradient maps of subject 2 and subject 3. Similarly, the inter-subject similarity matrix of principal gradients is defined as the correlation between subjects' principal gradients. As we consider 5 principal gradients, we end up with 5 inter-subject similarity matrices. We will use multi-kernel regression for behavior prediction if there are multiple inter-subject similarity matrices. Next, we will talk about inter-subject similarity matrix for soft parcellations. For spatial ICA, assume there are k ICA components. For each subject, we can obtain a k-by-k partial correlation functional connectivity matrix. To construct the inter-subject similarity matrix, we took the lower triangular part of the functional connectivity matrix and correlate between each pair of subjects. Similarly, we can obtain an inter-subject similarity matrix for profumo using partial correlation functional connectivity. However, in the profumo framework, the inter-subject variability was most captured by spatial maps instead of functional connectivity, as shown in Janine's and Sam's paper. Therefore, we correlate spatial maps for each pair of subjects and end up with 50 inter-subject similarity matrices. We then average them to obtain a single similarity matrix. In this way, we have 2 similarity matrices for profumo. We then use multi-kernel regression for behavior prediction. Let's move to hard parcellations. For both Schaefer 400 region group level parcellation and mine 400 region individual specific parcellations, we first generate partial correlation functional connectivity for each subject. We then correlate the lower triangular part of functional connectivity between each pair of subjects to obtain the single inter-subject similarity matrix. In the last part of my talk, I will show you the behavior prediction results of gradients and parcellation approaches. Here is the behavior prediction accuracies average across all approaches for 58 behavior measures. The box plot was colored based on how many approaches can predict this behavior very well. So white box indicates all approaches predict poorly for this behavior, and dark red box indicates all approaches predict very well for this behavior. The behavior measures are categorized into task performance measures and self-reported measures. We can see there are more orange dots on the left. So if we average across self-reported measures and task performance measures, we can see that task performance measures can be predicted much better than self-reported measures. If we average prediction accuracies across self-reported measures, The pink results are showing prediction accuracies of gradient techniques. The blue results are showing prediction accuracies of spatial ICA with different resolutions and proformal. The yellow results are showing hard parcellations. We can see that overall prediction accuracies of gradient techniques are lower than the parcellation approaches, and the individual specific hard parcellation performs the best. We then average prediction accuracies across task performance measures. Again, we first see prediction accuracies of gradient techniques and prediction results of soft parcellations and the results of hard parcellations. Again, prediction accuracies of gradient techniques are lower than parcellation approaches. To summarize, in this talk, I've shown that individual specific gradients can also be used for behavior prediction. In the kernel ridge regression framework, overall functional connectivity from brain parcellations outperformed gradients for behavior prediction. We have repeated this with linear ridge regression, and the conclusions are similar. However, we caution that gradient techniques are relatively new, so future research might get further improvements. It is also worth noting that the individual-specific hard parcellation approach actually incorporated gradients in deriving individual-specific parcellations. Further testing in new datasets and other supervised learners would also be desirable. All our software are available on GitHub. This includes the Schaefer group-level parcellation and our kernel ridge regression model for behavior prediction. The code of the individual-specific hard parcellations will also be released here once the paper is published. I would like to thank our group members and collaborators, and our funding support. Thank you.